That's pretty hard to follow, I'm not going to lie. Carolyn, that was awesome. I do have a sponsor. I've had a sponsor for a few years, and arguably that sponsor was responsible for me getting my first CEO job. So it works, and it's important, and I agree with you. And part of the reason why we created this was not just to catalyze a conversation that we felt like wasn't being having had in this valley, but also because we felt like people needed to have a network that they might not have otherwise had. So your point is absolutely well taken. So two things left. Thank you for being here and bearing with. Thank you. Thank you. I want to recognize the people. We want to recognize the people who've made this happen, because it's really not Amy and me. I mean, it's like we said, the ideas are great, but it's the execution of the ideas that actually make a difference. And so we want to recognize the people that made tonight happen, because we actually do work on this conference for about 9 months of every year now, just making sure we source quality speakers, that we actually set an agenda that matters to people, and that we get everybody in the door that we think is going to be, creating the conversation that we want to have. And then we also want to recognize the people that, as you heard earlier today from Jen, are creating these events throughout the year that are happening that allow us to have a presence in different places other than Silicon Valley, which is really important because MedTech just doesn't happen here. We know that. And also because we want people to have conversations at a more intimate level that might be smaller than 200 people and have sort of fireside chat settings, which now are happening in multiple cities throughout the year. So when I call your name, please stand. And shamelessly take credit for everything we've done. Everything that, we're standing here claiming that we've done, but we really haven't done, you've done. First of all is Jax Ashby, who's our event manager. She's actually doing something with the event. Jen Beeden, Amanda DePalma, Virginia Giddings, Jessica Hudak, Bridget Hurley, Nicole Osmer, Laura Palmer-Lohan, Natalie Schlafman, Susan Stimson, who did double duty with her board today, Tamara Elias. This is the core team of MedTech Women. And so I'm going to now tell you who specifically is responsible for the content of MedtechVision, which is everything you've heard today, and everything you hear at the fall conferences. Katie Arnold, Debbie Baker, Amy Bergstrom. Some of these people have had to get on planes because they have day jobs. Lynn Edwards, Stephanie Jones, and Luke, Janie Manjusoff, Debbie Donovan, Rena Mishra, Azadeh Nasibi, who, by the way, is doing double duty for events and conferences. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Leslie Oley, Jessica Volchak, Chrissy Wright, and Ariel Matavish, who I know is on a plane. The events folks, Terry Burke, who I don't think actually is here, from Edwards Life Sciences, who, by the way, has also championed Edwards sponsorship, both of the events and of the conference. Shannon Bergstedt, Catherine Kavanaugh, Liz Cumby, Becky Lai, Nancy Lynch, Amaza Reitmeyer, Jessica Richter, Anna Shavansky, and Aparna Kapoor, who I know is also on a plane. Thank you all. Amy and I had a good idea. Actually, Amy had a good idea, and then I added to the good idea, but minor. But you guys actually made it happen, and you've done it for 5 years, and we're going to do it for 6. So just get ready, because that's going to come. We're going to give you a small break. So thank you all very, very much. So each year, we sort of inadvertently set traditions that we didn't know were traditions, but now it's 5 years, so it's kind of a tradition, that 2 people from the organizing committee actually closed the conference with thoughts that they felt were relevant and important for the day. And, we do it in a way that we feel like is also recognizing contribution. And I want to say something special about these 2 people because they don't know I'm doing this, and it's probably going to embarrass them, and I'm going to do it anyway. So I've known Jessica Hudak and Leslie Oley since they were students at Stanford. And they were associated with biodesign, and I've had a long history, proud history with biodesign, and coaching teams along the way, and mentoring students along the way. And in both cases, they came to me and said, "Hey, so-and-so said we should talk to you." And as you've already heard, based on my comments about Farrellyn earlier, I actually believe you always take the meeting. Always. And in both cases, I talked to them. And in one case, I absolutely aggressively tried to recruit Leslie Oley to my failure at Guidant, but I still will do it someday. I shamelessly admit that. And in the case of Jessica Hudak, she didn't want to be recruited. She wanted just some advice about her career. And I thought, well, I can tell you my opinions, but I think you're going to be fine. And ultimately, that's why I took the first meeting. The reason I took the second meeting and the third meeting and the fourth meeting is I actually want to work with these two ladies someday. In fact, I would work for both of you shamelessly. And so that's kind of my criteria for the fifth meeting and the sixth meeting and the seventh meeting. So Jessica Hudak and Leslie, please come up and close MedtechVision 2015 for us.
So thank you so much, Deb. So we'll keep this brief because I have a broken leg, and Jess already fell off the podium today during her AV duties, so we're kind of a liability if we're up here for too long. So with that, yes, exactly. I'm glad you have that.
So I'm Jess Hudak, and this is Leslie Oley, and we've had the honor of working with MedtechVision for the last 4+ years. And we wanted to highlight some of the key themes that we were excited to hear in the audience today.
So one of the first ones is something that came up again and again and again through panels, and that is that we need to remember to actively engage with and listen to who you're ultimately designing for. Listen to your users. User insights are incredibly important. And I think this really goes to some of the original genesis of MedTech Women, where I think really early we identified this sort of shift in patients from sort of this like afterthought at the end of this whole long process to really the key users of our products. And I think we're really proud as an organization that we saw this early and incorporated a patient keynote theme from the very, very first conference that we ever had. And as Deb put really well early today, the patient keynote every year resets and recenters our way of thinking. And this year was really no different for us. Amy Tendrick this morning did an amazing job of reminding us to design for life and urge us to really think about our products outside of the realm of the clinic. Panel 1 reminded us to really keep testing your insights. Don't just assume that you know, but you also have to listen to your intuition at some point. And I thought it was really nice that Farrellyn's legacy has taught us that we sometimes have to make decisions without all perfect data. Leslie Trigg did a really nice summary at the end of her panel. Number 1, make sure that you have the critical consumer insight. Not just a insight, it has to be the right one. Radical honesty works, and it's about listening, not just blasting out your message.
Amy also started out the day with the maybe surprisingly not obvious comment that women are not just small men. And that was reiterated throughout the day as we learned that women with heart disease don't present in the same way as men. We talked about listening to users, but sometimes it's more than that. And panel 2 presented some great case studies around how gender differences can play a role in clinical outcomes. Scientific data is needed to tease out physiology, biology, genetics. Complex gender-specific outcomes will never be understood if women aren't represented in clinical trials. Panel 4 reminded us that atypical symptoms, just because they're in women, really aren't that atypical. And we need to remember that subjective symptoms make diagnosis inherently difficult. And will always include gender bias until we have more sensitive diagnostics in the future. Excuse me.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about marketing, which is what I currently do now. Marketing specifically to women offers both this challenge and this really incredible opportunity for all of us in the room. But we really have to challenge the status quo in the process of doing this. Andrea Millard from Amada reminded us that pink's not a strategy. It doesn't work. And it's really hard to market to women if we just keep talking to all the men. Even though women are a segment, in many situations we really need to be cautious to not just generalize and stereotype what women want. More thoughtful segmentation is often needed. Beyond that, you still have to do all the hard work to understand who your actual specific user is. Amy Tendrick, again, explained so well that patient engagement isn't something that you do to people. It's not something you just like drop on them like a bomb. It's something that's offered, and you need to really bring people in and engage with them in the discussion.
And so along those lines, knowing your target audience, it's also important to be aware of the language that you use. Kim Popovits talked about an ad that missed a mark back in the day and instead urged us to leave people with hope, feeling hopeful so that we can actually start a dialogue. Danica Harrison showed us some great case studies of how a couple prancing in their bikinis on the beach or streakers at a football game didn't resonate with either female consumers, male consumers, or their target physician segment. Language is so important. When talking to patients, for example, use accidental bowel leakage instead of fecal incontinence. When pitching to VCs, say transvaginal, not vagina. But seriously, bringing tough conversations out of the closet is important, whether in the boardroom or in your physician's office.
And I think really we here in the audience have a big responsibility to take a leadership role in continuing to reinforce the idea that serving this like really unique segment of the market can really drive significant value, and really bringing that value into part of the discussion, which kind of harkens back to a conference from a year or two ago. It was great to hear from panel 3 today, who really specifically invest in and participate in this largely unrealized potential of women's health. And they really taught us that there's a blockbuster opportunity there, and it needs to be communicated. The obvious ones are sort of in the women's specific conditions that they talked about, but there's also diseases that we need to think about more in a holistic, broader sense outside of that, ones that manifest differently in women, or areas where women really drive the decisions. They give examples in pediatric and elderly care. We heard again and again and again today, women are engaged and active in healthcare decision making. I think a lot of us in the audience see here how women are often really the key healthcare decision makers in a household, but I know I was personally surprised to hear that women represent 90% of the healthcare decisions, 9 out of 10 of every decisions that are made, and own more than 3/4 of a nation's financial wealth. Which I think really, at the end of the day, uniquely positions us as women to sort of light a fire under the medical industry, as someone really nicely quoted today.
Every year, we always have a bigger call to action here at MedtechVision, which is to incorporate the learning from the conference into our day-to-day lives. One that stood out for us was be brave, be bold, and be radically honest.
I think one that was really interesting to me is watch what some of the large retailers, Walmart, CVS, some of those other people are doing. They've really understood the power of the female consumer in a lot of other segments for a very long period of time. And they have a tremendous amount of reach. And I think with that comes this really interesting potential to find solutions that address some of the largest healthcare burden issues in society today that the system really doesn't have the capability to absorb right now.
The Farrell & Powell Award embodies mentorship and innovation. In this spirit, Deb also asked us, when presented with an opportunity to help or mentor others, always say yes.
Thanks again for that. Yeah. Kim reminded us that good decisions don't necessarily mean that you're always right. I thought this was awesome. As long as you consult the right people and make the best decision that you possibly could with the information you have. But ultimately, at the end of the day, your results rule. So make sure you're getting credit for the results that you're achieving.
And we learned when it comes time to wrestle a shark, you got to jump into the water because we all know our husbands aren't going to do it.
We knew that would be good. And the last one that we just wanted to leave everyone with tonight that really struck us is everyone in this room here has a superpower. We all have one. The healthcare system deeply needs our diverse perspectives, our unique talent, and our courage to really push change forward. So, thanks for having us.